You're listening to the Loving Your Own Soul podcast, and I'm your host, Britt. Guided by my own intuition, my intention is to deliver genuine conversations centered around health and wellness, spirituality, self-expression, and culture. In this space, I will provide you with real-life stories, theories, and inspiring perspectives to help you uncover and tap into your own true potential. I'm so grateful you've chosen to tune in with me on this mindful exploration to living a more fluid life through a deeper connection to the soul. Now let's dive into today's journey. I'm Britt, your podcast host and holistic wellness coach, here for the purpose of guiding you to tap into your own true potential. And today's conversation could not correlate more deeply with my own mission and vision for the podcast and just overall soul expansion that I wish for all of us here in this lifetime and many other lifetimes before and after where we sit today. So we've got fellow podcaster Dana Whitby, host of the Soul Rising podcast, will join me for a conversation all about our soul's journey, past life regression, spiritual awakenings, oracle cards, connecting with our higher selves, parenting perspectives, honestly, just all the things. This conversation is so beautiful. I know you all are going to relate so much to this and also equally fall in love with Dana just as much as I did. But first, I wanted to pull an oracle card for this episode, as we do talk about cards here in the conversation, and then also just a collective message for all of you this week. Now, I elected to pull a card from Rebecca Campbell's Work Your Light deck, and honestly, this card could not be more perfect for this episode and our current perspectives, but this card also just has Dana's energy all over it. My body just lit up when it came flying out of the deck. It was so beautiful, but the card, and I will also post this card on my Instagram so that way you can see how beautiful it is. But the card is Anna, grandmother of Jesus. Keywords are seeding the light, laying foundations, divine plan. And the guidebook and author's meaning behind the card states, pull to it. Oh my goodness. And of course, the message is on page 88, which 8 plus 8 is 16, which is my angel number, and 88 in general is a really powerful number. So that is beautiful in and of itself. But the meaning behind this card: Anna, grandmother of Jesus, was an ancient mystic who dedicated her life to laying the foundations for Christ consciousness to be woven through all of life. She is not widely known, but without her, Christ consciousness would not be rising as it is today. Anna represents the quiet dedication that is sometimes required to live a life of service. She represents the generations that came before that devoted their lives to dreaming a new world into being while knowing that they would not see the glorious end result. She represents the dutiful soldier, the unconditional mother, and the mystic who can see the thread that is woven through all of life. Anna teaches us that we all have a part to play in the divine plan. It doesn't have to be on the world stage to be significant. One person's part is not worthier than another. One person's part may be to mother their children. Another's may be to gather women in circle each month. No part is better or worse, more important or less significant. We each have within us a seed of light that we incarnated to share. Anna is gathering us all to remember and surrender to our part of the plan. Wow. I'm filled with goosebumps reading this message again, as it resonates so deeply, but more so for this conversation. That was honestly the most perfect little preview for today's conversation with Dana. I can't wait to hear post-episode what you all think, but then also how you feel this card relates to the right here, right now, no matter what time you are listening. And speaking of listening to podcasts, Dana and I actually did a podcast swap. So I will be featured on Dana's podcast, The Soul Rising. So do stay tuned for that episode, as it was another incredible combo. I'm just so thankful for Dana's friendship. She has brought so much goodness into my life in our short time of knowing each other. Definitely a part of the Soul family, and I truly cannot wait to just hear what you all think of Dana and this insightful conversation. But first, before we do jump into today's episode, I did want to briefly touch on my April giveaway. So April is my birthday month. My birthday is actually tomorrow, April 14th, if you are listening to this episode on the day it comes out. But April also represents the 11th month of the podcast. We are coming up on our 1 year, which is so exciting. So in celebration, I'm giving away a huge gift box with 11 of my favorite wellness tools. Inside this gift box, it will include the Work Your Light Oracle deck that I just pulled the card from. It will also include products from Hum Nutrition, Hue Kitchen chocolate bars, Ecoa fruit bars, Tea Bella teas, some Palo Santo, a Pura Vida charity bracelet, one of Gabby Bernstein's journals, so many fun items. And it was really just my way of saying thank you to all of you for continuing to support me in this journey. I love giving gifts is part of my love language. It's something that truly lights me up. So I just thought that this would be such a fun way to really just celebrate each other and celebrate this wonderful month of April. So if you do feel called to this gift box and are inspired to leave a rating and review of the podcast, all you have to do is simply subscribe, rate and review the show over on Apple Podcasts, and then be sure to screenshot your review for proof. DM it to me on Instagram so that way I know that it was you, where your review came from, at Loving Your Own Soul, and I will then enter you into the giveaway. And if you feel super inspired and you want to share your favorite episode or conversation like today's with Dana, I will also give you an extra entry. This giveaway is only happening during the month of April here in 2021, and the winner will be drawn and announced on May 1st. So simple as that. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into today's wonderful conversation with meditation teacher, podcast host, Reiki healer, therapist, and just beautiful soul, Dana Whitby. Dana, welcome to the Loving Your Own Soul podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. This has been a long time coming, so I'm really, really happy to be here.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited to introduce our listeners to you if they're not already familiar, and just really kind of deep dive into your beautiful journey, because I know we were just chatting right before this, just the journey of life and all the things that come with it. And I know each of us have our own journeys, but I know you in particular have definitely really just gone down a path that's kind of opened up your world and brought you to where you sit today with your own podcast as well, and then your professional work and being a mom and wife and just all the things that come with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is in traditional counseling. So I have a master's degree in counseling. So I did therapy for a number of years. I worked in middle school, which is not where I wanted to be, but it's where I ended up. Working with middle schoolers, and especially with their parents, is not exactly my calling, but it was a wonderful foundation for what I would do eventually. So I got pregnant in my 4th year of counseling, and my husband and I decided that I would stay home. And during that time, I had a huge spiritual awakening when I became a mom. Mm-hmm. I think becoming a parent really opens up some of that inner child work. We were actually talking about this before we started recording. Becoming a parent really makes you question who your parents are and the kind of upbringing you had and how that created you. And so, or at least it did for me. I shouldn't speak for anyone else, but that was my experience. I had a huge spiritual awakening, and it was around that time that I decided to start seeking some different healing modalities for myself. So I dabbled my toe in all kinds of different things. And I decided that I would start a podcast. And the podcast would be to help other people kind of open up to some of those different modalities that I had tried and that I loved. I wanted to share about different thought leaders in the industry and just really help open people up, and also share my own journey along the way to really open up my own throat chakra and to heal some of that. So yeah, I began my podcast, and in the time of my spiritual awakening, I became trained in past life regression work. So I'm a past life regression therapist. I'm also trained in meditation. So I'm a meditation teacher. And also, I'm a Holy Fire Reiki master. So those are some of my top 3 modalities that I love the most. But I also love to utilize oracle card decks. I'm sure we'll talk about that. That's something that I have loved since I was 16. I bought my first deck when I was 16 years old. So yeah, so I try to incorporate them into every episode. And so that's kind of a short version of my journey. That's the super, super short version.
Cool. Oh my gosh. I can only imagine where you started out with counseling for middle school students. I mean, for me, middle school was such a beast. Like, I don't like to look back and think that I didn't enjoy a piece of my life, because it's all a piece of the puzzle and, makes us who we are. But middle school was rough for me, like definitely my roughest couple years, I feel like.
Oh my gosh, same. And being on the other side of it as the counselor helping those kids, it's funny because at that age, there are kids who are really kind of not behind, they're sort of immature and innocent. And then you've got the ones that are out there doing drugs and having sex, and they're all in the same couple of years together. And so a kid would come into my office and I'm like, where are you on this spectrum? Because I have to meet you where you're at,
Yeah.
That age is just such a big range of experience. So
oh my gosh. Yeah. That reminds me of like this boy in I think it was like in 6th grade, like right when I had entered middle school, who like sat near me in class, and he would like reach into his pants and like touch himself because he thought it was funny. And I was just like so mortified. But then at that age, you don't know what to do. So I would just like sit there, like staring straight ahead, like I do now in a car, if like some like weirdo is trying to wave at me, and I'm like, I don't see you. I don't see you. But I'm like, oh my God. So
yeah.
oh, so funny. And then the parents too. I mean, just, you're a parent yourself. I'll be entering into that soon, and then having to just that experience with all of that. So definitely a lot to unpack there. But
that was interesting.
Completely. I love though that you're a past life regression therapist. So I'm sure you're familiar with Jordan Younger of The Balanced Blonde. She had done an episode earlier, maybe last year, the year before, I don't know, where she talked about this like YouTube past life regression meditation thing that she did. And I found it and I ended up doing it myself. First time I fell asleep, second time I actually went all the way through it. And it was my first past life regression. And it was amazing. I actually would love to do one with someone. So maybe we can set up like a virtual session together, because
I love it.
I would love that. But I would love to hear kind of your thoughts on my experience. So I had seen my husband, who's my husband today, in my past life regression. We were in Ireland with the potato famine, and he was actually my dad at the time. And he was super sick. And I was so upset because who was his wife at the time wasn't feeding him the right foods, and the foods were making him more sick, but nobody was understanding that. But then no one was listening to me. And then he ended up passing away. But in this lifetime, my husband had a massive healing journey where out of the blue, huge chronic illness. And since then, like his Western medicine doctors completely saved his life. But then we went through the whole route of medications, and then how do we really get to the root cause, and ended up really healing him through a whole lot of things. I mean, the whole picture, but with the power of plants and food and everything. And in this regression, I was like, and I've always had this weird fear of like, oh, but what if you like die before me? And then with this sickness of like, but if we're like, before we got married, I was like, but if we're together, like, are you going to be able to like live a whole life with me? And he's like, yes, what are you talking about? And then in this regression, I was like, oh my gosh, like in this lifetime together, I was able to help him among many other people and forces. And then now I like get goosebumps as I say this, we now like, he's not going to pass away in this lifetime. we experienced that. And now, so it was just so incredible. Just a little bit of a experience there for anyone who's not familiar with past life regression, but I would love to hear from you, just like what it's done for your life, clients. Obviously, we don't have to do any personal stories, or just even kind of your opinion on my experience, because it is so profound.
So the first thing that I want to mention is going back to your first experience where you listened to it and you fell asleep.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people will think that that's unsuccessful. Like, oh, I fell asleep during that and I didn't get anything out of it. That is totally not true, because your subconscious was still actively participating in that past life regression.
Mm-hmm.
So you received information and downloads while you were asleep that will help you later on. It could have been things that maybe you're not ready for right now to consciously be aware of. It's things that could have overwhelmed your system, potentially trauma from a past life that wouldn't actually be helpful for you to see. That bringing that awareness back to your subconscious can help that rise to the surface and help you heal it in your life. So it's interesting sometimes if you do fall asleep during a past life regression to then notice what comes up for you in the days and weeks following, because you are usually going to be processing some of that stuff that came up. So it's never a waste. Like, it's never a waste if you fall asleep.
Thank you for making note of that, because that happens to me sometimes, and I was like, dang it, like, no. Yeah. So thank you for pointing that out.
So don't ever feel like if anyone listening, if that happens, even in a meditation, even as something as simple as that, if you just fall asleep during meditation, it's fine. That's what your subconscious needs. So just know that your guides and your angels are always working for you to give you the highest and greatest good. So whatever you need out of that experience, even if you're unconscious for it, is going to happen. So also for the life that you did see, I just listening to that, and me personally knowing your story from listening to your podcast and following you on Instagram, I could see so many parallels, and that's incredible. I mean, the fact that it was during a potato famine as well, and then you helped heal him with a plant-based diet, like nothing is ever a coincidence.
It's crazy, right? Like, it's so amazing.
It's so, so crazy. So, I think seeing those things just helps us further understand the path that we're on and maybe why things are playing out the way that they are. And for you, it also helped you to kind of free some of that fear of him passing away. Mm-hmm. That's a past life fear that you were still holding on to, even though it's not true in this lifetime. So I think that's beautiful that you were able to release that. It's also interesting to see the relationship. So, in this lifetime, he's your husband. In a different lifetime, he was a father. So maybe there's some times when he parents you in this lifetime because that's what he was used to, like giving you advice, kind of pushing you a little bit, doing some of those fatherly things. Yes. It explains the relationship now. So do you find that that's true?
Completely. Yes. Yeah. We definitely are like both always trying to like better one another, but there are times where I'm just kind of like, up in the air a lot. And he's like, okay, you need to come back down, or like, you're freaking out about this. And literally like, this is not in existence.
Yeah. I think that's it's just amazing what you can uncover, and you can just continue to peel back the layers of that one life. But having other experiences and doing other past life regressions just only open up more and more information, more and more understanding. The other thing that you can do if you want to take things even a step further, and this is something you can do on your own, you don't have to have a regression therapist, but if you do a regression and you find out information that was difficult or challenging, you can go into meditation and you can visualize that life going a different way, having an ending that you would like to see, or an ending that is better or different, because the reality is that time is not linear. That life is happening right now alongside of us. So imagining it and changing it can actually change the trajectory of this life, because it'll impact, it's like a domino effect through time. It's such a hard concept to like wrap our minds around as humans, but you can just visualize it ending differently and it'll be so. Cool. So that's a cool thing that you can do if you afterwards,
Oh my gosh. I love that. Yeah. That's super interesting. So what piece of your journey, or where did you end up deciding to actually become a past life regression therapist?
It's funny. It was something that I was like pushed into. So a friend of mine reached out to Peter Woodbury, he is incredible. If you don't know who he is, follow him on Instagram, check out his website. He is a past life regression therapist instructor through the Edgar Cayce Institute, the ARE, which is located in Virginia Beach. So my friend reached out to him. She wanted to get trained. She couldn't go to he does these big group training sessions, and she couldn't make it to the ones that he was leading. So she called to ask if he would personally train her. And he said, well, I've never done that before. I guess I would, but could you find someone else who would want to do it as well to kind of make it a little bit more worth his time to have two people, both of us paying? And so she thought of me first and called me. And at first I was like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, I mean, at that point I had done a past life regression. I liked it, but I was like, no, I don't think so. And so I just sat with it a little bit. She kept saying, I really feel like this is for you. I really feel like you should consider this. And so I did. And I ended up just saying yes, just kind of on a leap of faith, just feeling kind of pushed by her a little bit. So I decided to go and have the training. And during the training, you regress each other a lot. That was another reason he wanted to have two people, so that we could practice on one another. And then at the end of our training, he actually decided to let us regress him in tandem. So we both did it together. And he hadn't been regressed by students in like 30 years or something. And so it was an incredibly profound experience for him. And for us, we have totally like bonded with him. Peter is one of my favorite people in the world after that experience. So
wow,
it was just really, really enlightening to do that.
Yeah.
So
did you go to Virginia Beach, or did he come to you guys?
We did. Yeah. We went to Virginia Beach and we actually stayed at his house. My husband was like, you're going where? Did you what? And you're staying at this guy's house? My husband was like, I don't know if I'm okay with this.
Like, are you sure you know what you're getting into?
Like, please don't get raped and murdered. Like,
right. Yeah. So many things that could happen.
But my intuition felt so good about Peter. And I was like, I'm going to be fine. Everything worked out great. But yes, when you put it on paper, he was like, this is not a good idea. But so Virginia Beach is like a vortex, it's incredible. I mean, I could just feel the energy the minute we got there. Mm-hmm. It was a beautiful place to have that experience.
Yeah, I have. It's interesting. Virginia Beach is actually a really special place in my heart. I've had incredible experiences there from a work perspective. It's what really opened me up. No coincidences. When I was working in event planning in the surfing industry, it was an amateur and pro level tournament, which a bunch of guys from California that really spurred my career. But everyone on our staff had gotten sick, including the director, and I was working for him, out with this red tide. And I was the only one that somehow didn't get sick. And because of that, I got to step up at a very young age and run everything with the CEO of Vans Shoes and what is now the World Surf League. And it just went from 0 to 100 for me. But then I also was then brought back there 4 or 5 years ago that had an event working in nonprofits with a completely different group who really it was the dark night of the soul. A completely different experience that then really took me into just a full journey of then a couple years that then got brought out of it. And it was kind of the start of my Saturn return. And it was the whole world exploded on me faster than I knew possible. So it's interesting that you say that about Virginia Beach as well, because I've experienced a lot there. So
yeah, it's a crazy place. I mean, Edgar Cayce picked it for a reason. He was called there and he got intuition about it. It's funny. I don't know if you had this experience, but when I got there and went to the beach, I was like, this sand is kind of a different color than other sand I'm used to seeing.
Yes.
My friend that I was with, she was like, no, I've never seen different. This looks normal to me. And I'm like, no, this is different sand. We asked Peter about it and he said that there's gold in the sand and that is why Edgar Cayce picked it. So he would have you do a treatment where you would, get covered in castor oil. He loved castor oil. And then you would go down to the beach and roll around in the sand so that the minerals in the gold would kind of sink into your skin through the oil. And then you'd wash off in the water and have this whole cleansing experience. So
wow,
it's a really wild place. Yeah, it's interesting.
Cool. The sand always felt very sticky to me there as well, which is interesting with having that gold element in there. Oh my gosh. I want to go do that. That sounds heavenly.
I mean, we can go there sometime. That would be fun.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that. So with your spiritual journey and kind of entering into all of this upon motherhood, and I mean, wow, what just a total shifting experience in general. But you mentioned, using your intuition as it pertained to working with Edward Casey and going into that experience and everything. I would love to know just kind of the beginnings of that journey, because I know that there's a lot of us out there who are just embarking on our own journeys, and maybe some little like awakenings or signs or moments when you started kind of noticing your intuition, and when that all just started like unraveling for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that question. So I mentioned that it really started when I became a mom. I have some childhood trauma, especially on my father's side. My dad is an alcoholic, drug addict, and so I had a lot of pain from my childhood that I had particularly pushed down. And so, having my own child myself, it really started during pregnancy, actually. It was really like, thinking, okay, well, what is this going to be like? What kind of a parent am I going to be? That's really when it began. It wasn't so much once my son was born, it was even before that. And so I remember being pregnant and reading Journey of Souls by Micheal
Mm.
Newton. Have you read that book?
I have not, but it's been a book that has been like calling to me so deeply. So honestly,
Okay.
the second I heard you talk, I was like, I know what she's going to say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, for anyone out there listening who also hasn't read it, it is a little textbook, but it's past life regression. And it is Micheal Newton taking kind of all of the similarities that people experience in their time before their life incarnating. So it's kind of that middle period where you're a soul between your lives. He started noticing when he would regress people back to the previous life, instead of going to the previous life, they would go to their time as a soul. And, what happens after we die, and why do we choose the lives that we choose, and why do we pick the people that are in our lives, and all the karmic stuff. So that really allowed me to make some peace with my dad, because I realized through reading that book that I had chosen him, and that he had actually done all of these things to help me grow and to help me become a light worker. And so I started fostering some gratitude for him and some gratitude for the pain that I had experienced, because without that, I would not be on this trajectory. I would not be doing this work, or at least not in the way that I am doing it. So that book helped me to really heal a lot of that. And, the journey is never done. I can't say that like my feelings about my dad are perfect after reading that book. It's not something that happens like that. It's a continual work in progress throughout my life and as things come up. But that really, really changed my thinking. And it also helped me to realize that as a parent, I'm not going to be perfect. It's impossible. We are humans and we are imperfect for a reason. And my children chose me, and they chose me for my imperfections. And so it's okay if I'm not this perfect mom. I need to do my best. I can show them my weaknesses. I can apologize for it. I can do the best that I can and be honest with them that I am evolving and growing too. And so it just helps me to understand that I want to create the kind of parent child relationship for my children that I didn't have, that I didn't receive. So that really was the beginning of it. That book was so incredibly helpful. My work is just so tied up in parenting and parenting myself and reparenting the inner child to, I've done a lot of work, like I mentioned earlier with the past life regression, imagining things in my childhood going a different way, imagining sitting down with my father and having a conversation and receiving from him what I desperately want him to say to me that he will never actually say in the physical form. And that's okay, because his soul knows what he's done. His soul, it would happen all on purpose. And so his soul would tell me exactly what I need to hear to heal that, because as our higher selves, we, in our perfect form, we can see that perspective. So I know his soul would say those things to me. So those are some of the things and the work that I did and continue to do. Like I said, as my children get older and different things pop up, it triggers different things within me that need healing. So I think one of the greatest healing journeys that you can go on is to become a parent. If you are open and willing to learn and grow from it, I think it is one of the most challenging and one of the most beautiful things. So
Mm.
yeah, those are some of the things that have helped me.
That is so, so beautiful. As humans, we want to naturally grow and to experience change. However, it's the fear of taking conscious action on these wants that keeps us stuck, keeping us unconsciously attached to an imbalanced life, attached to the habits and comfort that pain, suffering, fear, resentment, and limitations of our current realities provide to us. Whereas in reality, our true home, our real home, resides in a world of balance, a world we are aware of, yet also free of anything that no longer serves us. For balance is the key to life. Balance is the aim of all living creatures. We are all alive and living right now in this moment. Our earth is also alive. Our beautiful earth is mostly made up of water, and we too, as human beings, are made up primarily of water. Wherever there is water, there is life. And just as water must be kept in balance here on earth, we as human beings must also be kept in balance. After much discovery and witness to life's experiences, I created Ambu, a modern holistic wellness company. Ambu is a company designed to truly realign you on a mind, body, and soul level. Through my holistic wellness practice, my intention is to guide you to a more rightful and truthful way of living. A simple guide that complements and enhances where you are right now. Real change happens from within and is the key to not only transforming yourself, but your experience of the world around you. Together, I will work with you to uncover your why, adopt sustainable practices for long-lasting lifestyles, and expand to your fullest potential. Our lives, and especially the world of health and wellness, has gotten far too complicated over the years. Through my work with Ambu, I strip it all back to the beginning of time, back to the basics, in order to bring you full circle, not to a new self, but back to the essence of yourself, your one and only authentic self. Ambu offers a variety of programs and resources, each built with intention to target how unique we all truly are. All in all, a life well lived is a life that you are able to enjoy. It's time to rediscover your inner calling, your healthiest and brightest you that's been waiting inside of you for all this time. It's time to dust him or her off, and I'd love for Ambu to serve as your guide and accountability partner in this journey. So let's guide you back home to a life in balance through our modern holistic approach to wellness. To learn more, visit us at ambuwellness.com or connect with us on Instagram at ambuwellness, and let's transform together. It's interesting that you bring up that experience with your dad. So I've recently started working, I think it's been like a month and a half now, with Lindsay Schroeder of Hour and R, who I know has been on your podcast, and both of you have connected. And when we got together, my biological father and I do not have a great relationship. We've never had a great relationship. And my mom they got divorced very quickly right after I was born. She remarried my stepfather, who has been the most amazing person to me and has truly been who I, label and call dad. But this biological father wound has always been carried with me. And she brought up the fact, tapped in with my guides and everything like that, that his soul, his higher self of my biological father, he did the things he did in his human self to get me into the life that I needed with my stepdad to push me to where I am today and to bring me to where I am today, because my soul and my journey needed to have the life that I experienced and that I am experiencing, and that I couldn't have had that with him. So that, like you were sharing, just opened up everything. And it was like the gratitude that came pouring in, and just that, deep soul connection and getting out of like the humanness and the whys and, all these things, and like wanting those dialogues and wanting those conversations. And it was like, wow, like it just completely, it opened up so much. And it's so powerful when we have the opportunity to view it from that perspective and to understand it, because it's like all the weight that comes with being human just lifts immediately.
Absolutely. And, I just truly believe that a lot of us are here on earth at this time to break a lot of those generational cycles. that it can stop right now with us, and it doesn't have to continue with our children. Like I said before, we are not perfect people. We are never going to give our children a perfect experience, but you can break some of the really traumatic, really awful patterns that go back generations and generations and generations that we are holding on to within our DNA. And it's going to help change the world so that our children and their children can have a totally different experience, and that they can grow and ascend in different ways. It has to happen. So I think we are very special to be the chosen ones to end this generational cycle. And, I firmly believe this, that, doing this past life work that I've done, we are our own ancestors. If you think about it, like the way we reincarnate, I'm my own ancestor. Maybe I'm my own ancestor in a different culture or whatever, but.
Oh my gosh, my body just like lit up when you said that. It's so
Right?
true.
It's so true. It makes so much sense. We want to blame our ancestors as if they're not us. They are us. They are our past lives, right?
Yes.
So we are healing ourselves
Wow.
when we heal our ancestors. It's all connected. So yeah, it's just a beautiful way to break the cycles, but also to heal ourselves.
Completely. What is also cool with how connected we all are as well, and I feel that our age of the internet and technology has really made this possible for us, is connecting with our soul family and these relationships that you get that just, maybe open you up or feel that deep connection. And same with like traveling as well, like certain locations I've been to, and I was like, oh my God, like I'm home. Like, what is this right now? Have you experienced that with meeting just different soul connections and just connecting at that level with people as well?
Oh my gosh, yes. When you're saying that, I'm just nodding my head because it's incredible what we can do now with technology, and everyone wants to slam it for, how negative it can be. And it can be that. It can be. And especially if you use it as a tool for comparison to others, it can be a dangerous thing. And the keyboard warriors who are behind their screen saying whatever they want to say. There's definitely a dark side and a light side to technology and social media, but I totally 1000% agree with you. If you can focus on the beauty and the connection that you could make that you wouldn't have made with someone else otherwise, especially podcasting. I don't know if you feel this way, but if I wasn't podcasting, I wouldn't meet the people that I meet who message me on social media, or the guests that I end up meeting who then become someone that's so important to me. So yeah, the podcasting, social media, it's incredible. And I just think, everything happens for a reason, and social media and technology is happening right now in this age for a reason, for us to be able to heal those things, connect with who we need to connect with to help us heal. It's all happening exactly the way it's supposed to.
Completely. I agree so much with that. And especially with podcasting. The journey has just opened me up to like the connections and the people and the community that my soul had been yearning for so long. And it's such an interesting just journey of it, because I felt that like when I went to college, I find like I met my closest friends at that time, and I've had great friends growing up as well, but just this was a different connection that I had ever experienced before, and I was like, oh yes, like this is it. And I really feel like I'm going through that now again within this last year, of just the way that I started using social media differently. I started getting out of that comparison, and I'm human. I fall back into it as well, but I now know how to pull myself out. But the messages and the connections that take place, and I really do attribute that to the podcasting journey and just really opening up. And for me, I was kind of struggling too, because I was like, why am I so good at networking and all these things in person? And then it clicked, and I was like, wait, I can do this online. Like, I've been missing it. And it was like, it clicked. And then just, yeah, it's been so beautiful.
That's incredible, because I think you're right. We have to remember that we can employ a lot of the same strategies that we use in person online, especially in this time of COVID and pandemic and everything else. We're sort of forced into this technology, right? And so we have to adapt as a species, and as a person, we have to adapt and evolve. And so here we are.
Totally. And I think it's interesting too. I'm sure, curious to hear actually if you feel this way, but just from an intuitive perspective, I'm very sensitive to others' energies. And I definitely feel that on social media too, where I know if I get a message for someone or even just in communication, I can feel when it's not aligned. And similar to meeting someone in person, how you meet someone and you're just talking at a different level than other people. And not that that's necessarily a right or wrong, but you just have the option of how deeply you let people into your circle. And I definitely experienced that online as well, and just the energy of the interaction.
Oh, I totally agree. I think that people's energy follows them through time and space. Like that time and space doesn't have any bearing on it. It's just like the way that mediums can have a session with someone on Zoom who lives across the country. Back in the old times, before the internet, they would have phone readings. Like
Mm-hmm.
energy knows no time and space. So I totally agree with you that you can feel out who is aligned with you and who is not, even just behind a computer screen, even only just seeing their Instagram handle. I think that you can feel it because it comes with them. So I totally agree with you.
Absolutely. It's so interesting. I love this conversation so much. So, as we're talking, whether it's with social media or just patterns and cycles, like I mentioned, that comparison syndrome, like I fall back into that, but I know how to pull myself out in your journey and just going through your healing and trauma, or just even your own personal patterns and cycles that really aren't serving you, or that you cleared, and then the universe kind of brings up of, okay, are we going to still move through this? I would love to know what maybe modalities or just kind of what you use personally to move through some of those things.
Yeah, I love that. I think I've utilized different modalities at different points in my journey. Certain things were aligned with me more then than they are now, so to speak. Currently, something I'm really loving, it's something new to me, is craniosacral therapy.
Oh, I've never
Yeah,
heard of that.
it's, well, I'm sure it's a fancy word, but I'm sure you've heard of different modalities that kind of do the same thing. I think Reiki does this as well, but it's really pinpointing blocks, energetic blocks in the physical body, and then helping to remove them. So Diane Griffin is the practitioner that I've worked with. She's in Pennsylvania, but she does online sessions. I live in North Carolina, and we've worked together over the computer before. So just what we were talking about, it's amazing how you don't have to be in person to remove some of these blocks. But that is something that has been really helpful for me right now at this point in my journey. I really think that I need to take some of those stored emotions from childhood, from past lives, from whatever, and move them out of my physical body. My physical body is asking me to release some of these things that I'm holding on to. I really firmly believe the body holds a record, the body knows. So helping to move some of those things out of the physical, we can do a lot of work in meditation or in past life regression work or whatever, but physically removing stuff is what I'm just so called to right now. So I really love that method of work. But something that has stayed with me throughout my entire journey is meditation. I just think that there is nothing more powerful than meditation. That's why I became trained to be a meditation teacher, because I just think it is the foundation of everything else. And so I just can't say enough about how important meditation is. And if you are wanting to, talking to your listeners, if you're wanting to receive messages from spirit or tap into your intuition, into that inner knowing, building the container of meditation is the single most important thing that you can do. And I think, for someone like me, I'm an overachiever. I put a lot of pressure on myself, and I've always wanted to hear those downloads during meditation. And sometimes that happens, but sometimes it happens when I'm showering or when I'm taking a walk or when I'm cooking or working out or whatever it is. But it can come through at any time because I have built that container of meditation in my practice, in my daily life. So, anyone who is wanting to open up to their intuition and is like me and puts pressure on themselves to hear it in meditation, it may not happen then. So release that expectation, open yourself up to receiving it at any time that is in your highest and greatest good. But in order to get that, you have to build the container, the portal through which spirit can speak to you. And the only way to do that is through meditation, in my personal opinion. So
I love that. It's so true. That also kind of helps to take the pressure off of meditation and can kind of
Mhm.
allow meditation to be fun and relaxing and soothing as, it's supposed to be.
Yes. We put too much pressure on certain things. And I think releasing that and finding a way to be okay with it coming in another form, in another time, is just the divine feminine within all of us that we need to acknowledge. It's just allowing that free flow to happen, having the structure of the divine masculine with meditating every single day, but then not putting the pressure on it to be something that it's not, I think is really
Mm.
important.
What a beautiful example as well of the feminine and masculine energies. I love that. That's so tangible because I know for, anyone listening who's maybe confused or has heard, oh, I need to, tap more into my feminine, but like, how do I do that? And it is hard when, we're really trained to work more in that masculine and always kind of be in more of that masculine energy. And it serves its purpose for certain things, such as the structure, but then allowing that flow to come in. So I love that example. Is there anything else in your life I'd love to know that you have to maybe work through or that you are able to kind of observe the masculine and feminine energies together?
So I think also, I don't know why this is what's coming up for me right now, is thinking about my workout routine. Like having the structure of maybe how many days I want to work out, or maybe the types of workout that I like to do, but allowing myself to be free form and flexible and not saying like, okay, Monday is this type of workout, Tuesday is this type of workout, but rather saying, I'm going to work out this many days a week and I'd like to, having some goals, some structure, but then maybe you wake up on Tuesday and you're like, you know what? I don't want to work out for an hour today. I'm feeling tired and depleted today. So I'm going to work out for 20 minutes and I'm going to allow that to be enough. And it's going to be a restorative yoga practice, and then maybe you work out on Thursday and you're like, I have so much energy. I'm going to do my Peloton and spin and go crazy for an hour. Like, I just don't think that we should put those restraints on our body of following some sort of like crazy plan, and rather just be more free flow, but have still the expectations and the structure of what we need. I don't know why working out is coming. I'm looking at my bike right now. So
Honestly, so tangible. Like we all struggle with that in some shape or form.
And I think that working out, I have come to realize, is a spiritual practice for me, because it allows me to move the energy through my body so that I can then quiet my mind in meditation. I can't lay around all day and be lazy and then get into a meditative state. That just doesn't work for me. And that's something I've figured out over time. So everything we do is spiritual, even if it doesn't feel like it is. Like working out seems like so like you're in your body, you're in your human form, but that's such a spiritual thing.
So spiritual. I actually receive so many messages and downloads when I'm moving my body. So it is, so spiritual.
Yeah, that's just what came up for me.
Cool. No, that was honestly a phenomenal example. So one thing I also wanted to touch on with you, you mentioned Oracle cards and that you actually started working with them when you were 16, which I think is amazing. I personally, like looking back at childhood, became enthralled with crystals and rocks when I was super young and wanted to be an archaeologist and all these things, and would always get laughed at for like collecting rocks and going into, if we were in, maybe a spiritual shop or some, even like a tourist store that had the thing where you get to like pick out the rocks or the gems. And I was like, oh my God. And then now later on, I'm like, oh, I get why. But with the Oracle cards, I would love to know ways you use them and I guess just kind of your evolution with them, because you started so young, which is so cool.
Yeah. Thank you. So it's funny because my aunt actually worked for Louise Hay when I was younger.
Cool.
So I don't remember what she did for Louise Hay, but she worked pretty closely with her. So my aunt would send me stuff that was written by Louise Hay. I don't know if you remember Louise Hay came up with affirmation cards.
Yeah.
And so I remember my aunt sending those to me and I was like, okay, thanks. Great. Shove them in a drawer somewhere as a teenager, But I think it planted the seed. And so I do remember buying my first Oracle deck myself. It wasn't something that came from my aunt, like it was mine, but just feeling really called to a deck about angels. I just thought, oh, this is really great. So in the beginning, whenever I was struggling, I would just pull a card and be like, let's just see what these have to say, maybe helping me with a friendship or whatever I might have been struggling with at 16, boyfriend issues or whatever. And I just found that they gave me so much confirmation and so much solace and comfort that was really my initial draw to them, was like the comfort of it, of having something say to me like, yes, this is what you're going through and it's okay. And, sometimes the cards would give you a suggestion for how to handle something, but most of the time it's just validation. The card would just reflect to me what I was going through. And it was like, okay, phew, like there's a higher power out there that is somehow giving me this card out of all the ones in the deck that make the most sense to me right now. So it was a validation. It was a comfort. It was knowing that I wasn't alone, that I had a connection to something greater than myself. And so over the years, it's really evolved. I have gone through periods where I draw a card, at least a card every single day, if not a full spread for myself. And then I love to journal about it. That's how I love to use them in tandem, is not always just pulling the cards and moving on, but really letting them sink in. How does this apply? What does this mean for me? How is this a synchronicity that I can then take into my life and maybe change something, or just having a deeper understanding of myself? And so it's really grown over the years. My collection is embarrassingly large. An entire cabinet dedicated to them. But now I'm passing it on to my children. So I have a couple children's decks, and we'll pull those and allow them to, read the description and talk through it. I don't make them journal, but we just, have a discussion about it. So there's not very many children's decks out there. There's a couple. And I think we have probably the only ones that exist. So,
oh my gosh, so fun. I didn't know that there were children's decks. That's so fun.
Yeah, they are so cute.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine. I love too just the imagery in Oracle card decks and how every deck is so different. But I mean, I can just get lost in the images alone. They're so beautiful. Do you have, not to pick favorites, but do you have a favorite deck that maybe you've been working with recently, or specific bundle that kind of calls to you more than others?
Yeah. So honestly, anything by Colette Baron-Reid is my absolute favorite. I think the artwork is far and away more stunning than almost anything I've ever seen, at least from my aesthetic. They call me. But my favorite one that I use all the time, I use it in almost every single episode of my podcast, is The Wisdom of the Oracle by Colette Baron-Reid. They are just so simple. I know them by heart, but I love to explore and find all different kinds as well. But her decks are the ones that just feel so aligned with me and who I am. So
cool. I love that so much. You mentioned that deck so well. Is there anything that you do to study the decks, or even like get to know or create a personal relationship with your decks?
That's a great question. So I think just using them over time and reading the guidebook is just one way, just continually using them. But the other thing that I like to do, especially for decks that I don't know very well, or when I'm just starting out with one, is looking at the imagery. So, the way spirit speaks to us through meditation, through signs, it's always going to be through symbols. So looking at the symbols on the card, and, for example, there's a card called Treasure Island in the Wisdom of the Oracle. And on the front, there's this turtle who is swimming through the ocean, and he's got this open treasure chest on his back. So to me, that symbolizes representing our treasure that we carry within us all the time. So it's very simple. You can just look at the turtle, and he's got treasure on his back. So you can think those are your gifts that you carry with you, right? So acknowledging that, having gratitude for that. So just looking at the pictures alone, you can use your own intuition and come up with your own interpretation of the card. I think that reading what's in the guidebook is helpful because it tells you what was intended for that card and the energy that it has, but you can totally make it your own just through your own interpretation of the symbols. So I think that's one way, is just trusting yourself when you look at what's on the card.
Cool. That's so helpful. Thank you for that. And you do so many fun card pulls on your Instagram. And I know you have your Oracle forecasts that you do monthly with your podcast as well. For anyone who is not already familiar with you or your journey, where can people find you to connect with you?
Yeah. So I am the Soul Rising Podcast. You can find me on any podcasting platform. TheSoulRisingPodcast.com is my website. And on Instagram, I am at _Soul Rising Podcast. So those are the ways that you can connect with me.
Cool. Amazing. Well, Dana, this conversation was so enlightening. I've so enjoyed chatting with you. But before we close out, I do end all my episodes with some loving your own soul questions, which are just some kind of fun, sporadic questions to end everything with.
Perfect. Let's do it.
First question, because we just talked about your podcast, I would love to know how you came up with the name for it.
So originally, my podcast was called the Athena Rising Podcast. And that is because the goddess Athena is my maid spirit guide. And I was sort of honoring her and the way that she gives wisdom to me. So I wanted to put her name in my podcast. But then I started discovering that people were thinking my name was Athena. And like it was getting very confusing.
Funny. That's funny.
Like, I'm not Athena. My name's Dana. Da, 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 da. It was like a whole story I didn't really feel like going through.
Yeah.
I kind of went into meditation. I had been doing podcasting for at least a year at that point. And I was like, tell me what this should be because I love to honor you through it, but I don't know. And I just heard the Soul Rising podcast. So just replace the word Athena with the word soul. And I was like, okay, done. So I think soul encompasses just so much more of our healing journey and it's relatable to everyone. So it started as one thing and has just kind of evolved over time.
Cool. Such a beautiful evolution. I love that. Athena has actually come up for me through Akashic Records, reading sessions that we have had, past experiences together. So that makes sense why I feel such a connection with you. That's cool.
Absolutely. I love that.
Yeah. Do you know your human design type?
Oh, I don't.
Oh, that's okay.
I've looked it up before, but for some reason, human design has not resonated with me. And it's not that I think it's like invalid or anything. I think I just haven't found the right person to explain it to me. Like I just, for some reason, I don't know. Cause I remember reading about myself and I was like, that doesn't describe me. So I think I just found the right person. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. No, honestly, I honor that so much compared to like trying to resonate with it of just honoring, hey, this hasn't clicked with me yet.
Yeah. And I think it will eventually. For now, it just hasn't, I don't know.
Astrologically, do you know your sun, moon, and rising sign?
I do. I am a big astrology fan. So I am a Taurus sun, a Leo moon, and a Sagittarius rising.
Oh, cool.
Interesting little combo. Yeah.
Yeah. That's super fun though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I'm fire and water. So I'm an Aries sun with Sagittarius moon and then a Cancer rising.
Oh, I love that placement or those placements. That's so nice.
Yeah, astrology is so fun. So I love animals and spirit animals and kind of little animal symbolisms that come up. I would love to know if you have a spirit animal or just any animals that have crossed your path recently.
Yes. So I have 3 spirit animals. 2 were given to me by a medium that I went to before I even knew what a spirit animal was. The first is a panda. And it's funny because I was in a sorority in college and our mascot was the panda. This was way before my spiritual awakening. So I love the panda. I love the eagle and how it represents healing. Yeah. And also the owl, who is connected to Athena as well. And that ability to use your intuition and those kinds of things. The panda is kind of the warm and fuzzy, like, the panda has no enemies. So I love the elements of all 3 of those.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. We had a bald eagle here who would come to our house during a really big experience the earlier part of 2020 before the world kind of turned over. But he was with us and it was so beautiful. So what was something, we talked a lot about childhood, but what was something that you loved to do or play with as a child?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, my favorite thing as a child was American Girl dolls. I don't know if you to them.
Oh my gosh.
I really think it was like the beginning of a connection to past lives too. Like to really like, it's interesting when you think about that. Like if you play with American Girl dolls, I'm sure you gravitated to certain ones more than others. And it's probably because you had a life during that time, right? So
yes. Okay. So Samantha was my first one. And I was like, obsessed with her. Like Samantha and I were kindred souls. I had all of like the books. I don't know if you remember, they had like a whole book series as well.
I still have them.
You do?
Still have my original ones. Yep.
Cool. And then Felicity for me came shortly after Samantha. So mine were mostly Samantha and Felicity. I loved all of them. Like I would have had every single one if I could have. And I feel like I can't remember for some reason what the third one was. There's another one
Like
after.
Kirsten? I mean, you kind of looked
Oh,
like
yes, yes. Thank you. I was like, who is the
Kirsten.
blonde one?
Oh my
Loved
gosh, I
her.
loved it. Those were probably my top 3 also. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Totally resonated with the 3.
Oh my
I
gosh.
love it.
Yeah. American Girl dolls. Oh, I love that you brought that up. Yeah. Super special place in my heart. Do you have a favorite color or color that resonates deeply with your soul?
I would have to say pink, and I use that in my podcast artwork. I think pink is just so representative of the heart chakra. I know the heart chakra is green, but I think pink really resonates with it. And I just think that the pathway to any healing is through the heart. So that really resonates with me on that kind of level.
That's beautiful. Well, final question that I ask all of my guests, which is kind of funny because it's kind of the premise of our entire conversation here today. But when did your exploration to diving deeper into your own soul first begin? And how has it evolved since then?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I really feel like it started in childhood. Like I just feel like it was so early on. But I would say really the real deep dive was during my Saturn return. So in my late 20s, like I said, when I became a mom. And since then, I think when you really, throughout my life, it's always been there. But when you really focus on it, when it's really in the front of your awareness, is when you can really evolve and really grow and really dive into it. So I really think of that as kind of the true beginning of it all, even though it's always existed. So yeah, it's been about, let's see, I'm 36 now. So it's been, I'm almost 37. So I would say like 7 years that I've really been into it. Yeah. We talked about it so much that I don't want to repeat myself, but it's really evolved over time, dipping into all kinds of different healing modalities. So
yeah. Do you have any insight on where you feel the journey will go or what is maybe next for you?
That's such a good question. Oh my gosh. Well, I just hope to continue to expand upon what I've already built. So I am actually working on writing my own Oracle deck. So I hope
to, amazing.
Yeah, I hope to take what I have loved and just put my own stamp on it. So that is like the main thing that I'm thinking of right now that I want to expand into.
Oh my gosh. Well, I will definitely purchase one from you. I can only imagine how beautiful it will be because you are such a beautiful individual inside and out.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much for holding space today and sharing and just connecting. This was truly such a beautiful conversation. So thank you so much.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me, Britt.
Wow. What an incredible episode. I mean, gosh, was that not just so enlightening and cleansing and inspirational and just all the things? So many nuggets of wisdom. Dana is definitely phenomenal. Be sure to go check her out, check out her show, and stay tuned because, like I mentioned at the beginning, we did a podcast swap. So you will also get to hear me coming out on her podcast here in a couple weeks over on The Soul Rising. And with that, do be sure as well to enter to win my huge wellness gift box filled with 11 of my favorite items for the month of April by simply subscribing, rating, and reviewing the podcast if you feel called. Plus, you will also get a bonus entry if you also share your favorite episode with us on social media. Simply just be sure to screenshot your proof and send it to me as your entry on Instagram at Loving Your Own Soul. And as always, thank you so much again for tuning in and being a part of this community. I look forward to continuing the journey with you again soon.